going on, everybody? You are live with Osiris. Welcome to the Author's Lounge. The world is filled with storytellers, and I, along with my guests, are here today in the Author's Lounge to help educate and inspire the young generation of writers and creators. Now, my guests are professionals in publishing, writers from a wide range of formats, and successful entertainers. They will provide beneficial advice on what to do and what not to do on your path to success. So, without further ado, I'll present to you our next guest. Let's go. What's going on, everybody? You are live with Osiris, and welcome to the Author's Lounge. I have a wonderful guest here today, and this gentleman I was able to get in contact with through a previous guest that we had on, and I don't know. I feel really giddy right now because he's been in this position like a long time ago, 600 plus episodes ago, and many years back. But let me not prolong this. Let me just go ahead and introduce our guest today. Our guest today is a writer, author, screenwriter, filmmaker, and podcast host of the podcast show Creative Principles. At the time of this recording, his show has reached its 631st episode. Freaking goals, man. On his show, he interviews a variety of professional entertainers, filmmakers, writers, and much more. Additionally, our guest is an active blogger with a dedicated newsletter via his website, which I will share, or I'm sure he will share as well at the end of this episode. So it is an honor for me to be able to present to you the wonderful Brock Swinson. I said that right? Brock Swinson?
That's it. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So, as mentioned before, man, you've been around the block. You've done this before, and so I'm pretty much you, a less attractive version, though, of many years previous. So, man, I got so many questions, but I guess the biggest one is, how did you get started with your own podcast?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird story. I was writing for Creative Screenwriting magazine. I was living in LA at the time. I'm in North Carolina now. I grew up in North Carolina. I did live in LA for a couple of years. That's kind of where the film bug came in. But I actually I answered an ad through like Craigslist and got hired for Creative Screenwriting magazine, which was crazy at the time. They were transitioning from a physical magazine to a website. But I did that for several years, and podcasts were kind of like up and coming at the time, and I actually brought the idea. I think, hey, we have all this great audio that we're not using. Like, why don't we just write print on the website? So why don't we use this audio and make a podcast? And they actually just said, they're your interviews. We give it to you. Do whatever you want to with it. So I kind of went a little bit wider than just creative screenwriting, because we would say no to actors, directors, authors. I've since interviewed like chefs and anyone I would consider creative. So it gave me a little bit of a wider net to talk about like all things creative, and that was the origin, and that's how a lot of the bigger interviews got started. And then like after you kind of get some momentum going and get the names under your belts or views or downloads or whatever, I'm actually on like a bunch of lists now, and they actually contact me and pitch me people that they want me to interview, which is really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. And so what actually opened up the idea for you to figure that, what, I really want to commit to this for the long haul?
It's odd because it's like, I would say, despite all the episodes, and some have done well and went viral and things like that, it's still like it's very much a force multiplier. Like, I see on a very personal, like one-to-one thing, just talking to that many writers makes me a better writer. I ask them whatever I want to ask them. I do promote whatever they're pitching, but it's like 10% of the interview. That's why most of my shows, I would say, are evergreen. They're not really even. We're mostly talking about the habits of writing and all those types of things like that. Like, I get to kind of just take the nerdy deep dive on those things. Mm-hmm. So like, that's so beneficial in and of itself, but also I've carried that on to like write my first book, or I'm working on a documentary now, so I can go interview a bunch of documentary filmmakers and just pick their brain about every little thing. It's like with a question of like, hey, can I buy you coffee and pick your brain? It like lets me do that with a giant net of people. And I would say like, it feels like I can interview almost everybody. And sure, lots of people, famous people have said no, but equally like when the ones I get to talk to, they're usually promoting something like really meaningful for them. So when I got to talk to like Ethan Hawke or Anne Hathaway or Jim Gaffigan or Aaron Sorkin or people like that, it's not just their next thing. It's like this is their passion project. They're doing more than just the normal 10 interviews or whatever it is.
Right.
So it's like it's even like better, I feel like, to that I'm not in the very top 1% of podcasts, that I'm kind of like a little bit further down, because I really get like some of their best interview or the thing that they care most about, I feel like.
Oh, that's wonderful, man, and I think it speaks to your to the testament of your character, to just the longevity of it, and also being able to connect with other creatives, other writers, and being able to really pull out that. Hey, okay, cool. You know what? I'll help you promote this, but let's really talk about the principles of what it means
Yeah.
to be a writer. And that brings me to this, right? You had mentioned a few of your guests. Who are some of the guests that you've interviewed that have had? I'm sure many of your guests have had like a profound effect on you, but who are some of the more, I guess, more of the names that come to mind that have had a lasting effect on you as a writer?
You know, there's a lot of those I mentioned, like the big names are always stand out. Like, I mean, I got an email interview Mel Brooks. I sent him some questions, and I got to talk to his son. Ethan Hawke was talking about the Good Lord Bird. Aaron Sorkin was talking about. I think the first time we spoke, we are actually talking about his master class. So he was like very much in the depths of like teaching his own writing process. So those are huge. But then there's other ones like I write about in my first book, Ink by the Barrel. Michael Lannon, who wrote a show called Looking on HBO, like he just told me this idea about he spent many years not defending the time to write. And it's like little phrases or nuggets like that. Like that stuck with, I'm interviewing him probably 8 years ago now. And that's like the first or second chapter of my book. It's something I think about all the time. Like you really have to like, you know, literally schedule the time to write, block out the other things, you know, choose what's important to you. There are things like that that like probably shaped my whole mindset on productivity and everything else, that are just little nuggets like that. And what I tell like a lot of fans is like, you know, yeah, those are the most popular, the people that you know, but like if you're trying to be an up and coming filmmaker or a first time author, go listen to those people that are just like one step above you. Don't listen to, you know, the people that are too high. Their information is like irrelevant at some point. Like I watched some of James Patterson's masterclass, and he talks about like, don't worry about marketing. I'm like, dude, you're so far removed from like what it takes to like break in today. That's not really the case. So listening to like, study those people that are either like right above you, just like they've done exactly what you wanted to do within the last year. I think that's where you'll get kind of the most nuggets of information.
Okay. Okay, right there, and I would agree with that as well. You know, just in looking at how to climb and get to the next level, and you look at somebody who's all the way at the top of the mountain, I don't necessarily think it's as advantageous for the person who's trying to get to that point to reach
Yeah.
out to that person versus, hey, let me get a circle of people who, one, I can trust and who is willing to help me, who've been there but they aren't too far ahead of me, and they can kind of like help guide me on a more relevant path. Those who've reached the mountaintop probably have already spent like years, if not decades,
Yeah.
doing and molding out their paths. So speaking of which, exactly how long have you been doing this between being a writer and being a host of a podcast?
I mean, I've been with creative screenwriting for like over 10 years, which is like a rarity that I still write for them today. I still do
Yeah.
some interviews every year and things like that for them. But like most of my freelance writing work is like 2 year stints of like paid work. And then I've been like a freelancer or a non go into the office person since about 2016. So like almost, 8 or 9 years now.
Oh wow. Oh wow. And
Yeah.
so you've been able to really like benefit from this even from a financial standpoint, which many people aren't so fortunate to be able to say that, right? So you've worked for what you have. And so
Yeah.
like my follow-up question to that, right, is when it comes to being a writer and being able to like find something where, most people work just, a typical 9 to 5 job and then try to balance it out with doing other things and then write.
Mhm.
How did you get to a point where you can also do that as a freelancer and still benefit from like working for a company that you still write for?
Yeah, and I very much like I still do both. I own a company that I have now. We have a newsletter company. I'm actually partners with Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street, is like a partner in my company. So I started with That is, I kind of had like a authors and screenwriting rise and a simultaneous like marketing rise. And whenever I
Hmm.
could kind of cross those two paths is when it made the most sense financially. But I got started on like Upwork, or it used to be called Elance at the time. And actually, I'll give all your listeners. I so used to sell this course, but I just give it away now. So I have like the Upwork Unfair Advantage, I call it. So it's like it's probably like 20 or 30 videos of me breaking down like how to go find jobs, but then also how to get attracted to jobs. Because for a lot of people, like, yeah, the dream is to, write full time, be at home and do the things you want to do. But also like when you're starting out, like an extra like $500 a month, writing about something you care about is equally beneficial. So I've
Hmm.
taught like a lot of people like how to do things like that too. So I kind of simultaneously did those. I worked for a lot of small companies. Then I worked for ClickFunnels, where I got to do like marketing for people like Tony Robbins and people like that. Then I worked for this guy, Pace Morby, who's a real estate guy. A lot of jobs like that where I'd work for like 2 year stints, and that led me to like meeting Jordan Belfort and some of those guys and
Hmm.
working with them. So the thing is, though, it's very much the same thing. Like I put the same mind around like making my first documentary, which I'm working on now, or writing a book, or doing marketing. Like it's all like very much like treat your writing as a business and look at it that way, and you can almost do anything you want to do, especially today, like from your computer. Because I'm in North Carolina, like I don't, like I'm in an area where like I don't. All my peers are digital, pretty much. Like there's not a lot of
Yeah,
people in
tell
this
me
rural
about it.
area where I'm at. So yeah,
No, I fully agree with that idea of doing stuff. You can do stuff from your home,
yeah,
and I think we're in an interesting time, and just in the world, but in particular in the United States, where most of what we want to achieve, we can do it from our computer. Granted, we still need to go out and do things, in person, but
yeah.
if you want to achieve something at a high level, you just have to commit the time to it, and especially if you want to do it on your own, like I think where I can relate to you, Brock, is just that having that tenacity of just wanting to do something that you feel like it could be of a benefit, not just for yourself but for other people, right? You don't make it this far by just doing it on your own, and you've had extensive help, I'm sure, and many mentors. And so with that, right, with your climb to the success that you've reached and continue to reach, how do you manage to continuously attract people, not just those who have big names, but people who have some sort of credibility in general? How have you been able to continuously attract that?
I mean, one thing I feel like I've learned, like, so I worked with, Russell Brunson and Pace Morby, and now Jordan Belfort, and I'm like, I don't talk to them every day, but I'm on calls with them, weekly and stuff like that, and like, whenever they're dealing with their peers or colleagues like that, they're never like asking for anything. They're always like showing up with a gift. Like if they're going to approach you about anything, they're bringing you something that's like more than just win-win-win. It feels like they're giving you more than you can ever ask for.
Mhm.
Pace used to talk about this book called The Go Giver, and it's like
Yeah.
every act of giving is an act of receiving, and it's kind of just like some of it sounds a little woo-woo, but it's like when you open your mind up and you're just like putting a lot of good stuff out there, it does seem to kind of just work. Like it doesn't
Mhm.
really make sense, but like there are things that feel like affirmations or manifestations or whatever, just because like you're really going in this one direction and looking for those opportunities. People who think it's crazy, I'm like, well, it's like when you buy a new car and you see it everywhere. When you
Right.
really know where you're going, like you see the opportunities, so
Mhm.
I kind of see it like that. And then those people kind of emerge. It seems like they come out of seemingly nowhere, but it's because you're working relentlessly in one direction.
Oh, I love that. It's like I've heard of things like that as well, like the law of attraction or being able to manifest what you want, or manifestation, or some people are superstitious about it, some are
Yeah.
not. But it's definitely like when you are in alignment with what you're wanting to do, you begin to attract more of it. And I think that what you're saying is dead on, man. And I've seen it just with, for example, helping out somebody, and then like 2 days later, that kind deed that you did genuinely, with no expectation of receiving anything back, it just comes back. And I think it's the same notion with when you're relentlessly going after something, you receive it in the way that you attacked it. And for yourself, it certainly seems that it has been of great benefit to you. So, you mentioned documentary and you mentioned writer. I know at the intro I mentioned that you were a filmmaker as well as a writer, author, and a screenwriter. So, what's really the big difference, in your opinion, between writing for a book versus a screenplay?
Yeah, I mean, the literal part, there's definitely a different mindset. I mean, books just literally you can go into someone's mind and spend 80 pages in something that and plot wise is only, a few minutes or so. So there's that like literal aspects. And if you ever read your favorite books and watch the movies, they're always different. Everyone always says the book is better. But there's those aspects to it. But the real part is, eventually a movie is a collaboration. Like even if you're just a screenwriter in a room writing something, like you really need to be thinking about partnerships and working with other people and kind of where it can go that way. Also, if you're not doing that, you're just writing screenplays, at least the way things are today, it's really hard to break in any way whatsoever if you're not like eventually collaborating with other people. Whereas like you can write a book and go publish on Amazon and do it in the darkness of your room and never see another person and never
Yeah.
meet your readers and stuff like that. So I feel like they both need to collaborate a bit more, but movies, it's literally impossible without collaboration.
Oh, for sure. Now, like given movies, right? 'Cause I have a love and admiration for film in general, but with the certain artistic direction that film is, given that the confines of just certain limitations. For example, if you're doing a film adaptation from a book, it has to meet a certain amount of page limits. And so, from creative standpoint, and I'm not sure if this is the case with you, but I'm sure you know people that have been in this boat. If it has been you yourself, how have people been able to take a novel and confine it to a 120-page screenplay and still make it true to the story?
Yeah, I mean, everyone does it differently, and I've probably asked, like 100 people a version of that question.
Yeah.
I think it's almost like what's the essence of the story to you, and like that's almost the most important part. Like even above the plot and things like that is like you want to get things right, and then
Hmm.
part of it is like the difference in trying to do a biography versus a memoir, right? So a biography, you're trying to get the whole life, born to death type thing, which is literally impossible, right? So I interviewed Jonathan Eag, who wrote Muhammad Ali's biography, and it's gigantic, and the bibliography is like equally big on it.
Yeah.
But it's more like what's the memoir version, right? Because if you watch a film on Ali, even the Will Smith Michael Mann movie,
Hmm.
they're still kind of hitting like kind of his rise. It's not really doing like everything. So you still want to like what's the essence or what would make this like a memoir version, and that's just like you're telling a version of the story. It's not necessarily the full thing, and that's like that's why also you can make movies about famous people every 10 years because you're making them not only that filmmaker's perspective, but like the zeitgeist that we're in at that time is different, right? So like we're looking at politics differently, we're looking at the world differently. So I think like all those things matter, and all those things kind of like really shape your film, and they can do that with a book as well. But I think films is maybe more universal in that sense.
For sure. Is there a particular preference that you have one over the other, or is there just equal love for both the writing formats of being writing a book versus a screenplay?
I'm probably, I mean, like, um, I if I'm like literally writing them both, I kind of do a process that like lets me do a little bit of each. Like especially if I'm figuring out the characters, I may write part of it in prose and things like that. I work with a guy named Brooks Elms, who kind of does like a save the cat approach, where it's like you got an idea and you turn that idea into like maybe 40 sentences and turn that into 40 scenes, and then you kind of shape your film around it that way.
Hmm.
But films are like very structured, where novels aren't necessarily as structured to me. Like you can really like meander in a good way, kind of however you want to go. So I probably I've written a couple of novels like as like a ghostwriter and stuff like that, but I write them like you would a film. So if you read somewhere in the middle, is like the way Tarantino writes his movies. They're written like a novel, but they're very much a movie. So it's like very
Yeah.
plot and dialogue heavy. If I do write prose, it's still kind of like that, unless it's like just straight up nonfiction how to like. I write like 4 or 5 newsletters a week for different companies. So those are
Yeah.
just like very specific, like James Clear, Ron Holiday style stuff.
Oh yeah, and your newsletters. Well, at least the ones that I've seen through just your website, it's just sophisticated, man. And I can tell there's a love for it, a genuine love for the process of writing. And it's hard to find people who do that, especially in a world where there's just so much, AI. And not
Yeah.
to discourage those who use AI, because there is a benefit to it. But when you can talk to somebody and you learn that no, everything that this person wrote up, it came from their head.
Yeah.
It wasn't used from a software, and I think that there's power in that because there's many writers who I've met that are on the come up who feel like their voices are fading or they can't compete because of the AI that's out there, and they feel that, you know what, let me just step away. AI is just going to completely take us over, and there's no need for us. But no, reading your work and seeing what you write, it does show that that's not true. That, well, it's true that, it's here to stay with AI. But what's not true is that the people fading away, they can continue to do it just as yourself. And so with that, I wanted to follow up with another question just in regards to writing, and because you've provided so much insight and so many nuggets, even with your own show, that I'm sure you have been approached by people who are just starting out of, hey, like, what should I do? Like, I don't know if I want to be a screenwriter. I don't know if I want to write books. I just know I want to write. Like, what's your advice to them on which direction they should go?
I'll touch on the AI stuff real quickly. It's like I feel like I was lucky to write my first book. Like I wrote it like during the pandemic, so like
Mm,
2020. So I think I was lucky to not have AI at the time,
yeah.
and like really figure out what my voice was. So I almost encourage people to like try to write something longer that's literally just you. And then we do use AI in the newsletters and stuff like that I write, or with marketing or things where it's like almost related to the way you do a TV's writer's room and like the way James Cameron writes his movies today, the way he writes Avatar is he has 4 or 5 writers in a room. He tells them a bunch of ideas and they go and kind of spin it and turn it into a screenplay. I kind of treat AI the same way. Like I throw a bunch of stuff in there. I'll give it my writing samples or whatever. So if you can like really find your own voice, and then if you want to put that in AI and like have kind of a digital version of you're talking to, like I feel like that's maybe like you don't want to be left behind, otherwise
Hmm.
you're the guy on the horse while the cars are flying by, if you're not using some version of it, right?
Yes,
As
sir.
far as like what to write today though, it's like I've written everything as a freelancer. I've written like cookbooks and blogs and like, women entrepreneurial guides and like how to start a fast food truck book and all this kind of stuff like that. So, I mean, like you can write anything. I very much like disagree with like the idea that you really need to be like super niche. Like even though
Mhm. Yep.
I'm super niche in like the genre that I write for the most part, but I'll touch on like anything. And I feel like I can write like any sort of thing. So the question I think is more like, what are you obsessed about, right? Like one
Yep.
filmmaker told me that like his next project feels like a splinter in his eye. Like that's all he can think about until he gets it out, right?
Hmm.
So if you don't know that, it's like the hard part. And the way to maybe find that out is just to just read and write and watch a ton of movies and like figure out what your things are. One thing we do, so Diane that was on here is one of our students. One thing we do with our filmmakers, if you want to be a screenwriter or think you want to be a screenwriter, we really dissect, like, takes the time to figure out what your 10 favorite movies are
Hmm.
and then start to, like, analyze those. And, like, I was on a different podcast a couple months ago, and she was like, well, mine are not related. I like Finding Nemo and The Godfather. I was like, well, those are both about fathers and sons. So if you really think about the theme, no matter how far apart they are, like I write about these, you know, anti-heroes barreling towards this catharsis. Like that almost happens in all of my stories, no matter what I'm
Hmm.
writing about. And it's kind of between like Taylor Sheridan and Paul Schrader and True
Yeah.
Detective and some of those things. So like that's my wheelhouse, and like that's how I naturally think, and that's the type of stuff I love, whereas like Nolan writes about time, but also Christopher Nolan, but also about someone in a foundation as the foundation is crumbling around them. So when you start to like analyze your favorite authors and favorite filmmakers, even like subconsciously, they're doing something very specific with each of their stories. Like the guy, the director who did Parasite, all of his movies are about class warfare. So like
Hmm.
figure out like what's your thing that you're truly obsessed about, and then like go all in on that thing. Like don't lean back on it. Actually like go a little bit further in it, I would say.
I see. Yeah. So the obsession, that having that obsession of what you're trying to, even just in general, just trying to achieve something, it's will likely present itself in some form or fashion. And I'm with you as well. Just to kind of like caveat off what you were saying too, regarding with the AI, that I am with you, in terms of finding a way to utilize it in a way that it can help, like not necessarily detract from your own voice, but be able to maybe spit out some ideas in
Yeah.
ways that it can still benefit you, or even as a company, or as a just as a group, or even if it's just a few people. But also, I wanted to mention too that not all filmmaking, well, sorry, not filmmaking, not all like writing is created equal. And what I mean by that is that this format with books versus this format with screenplays, though it may have some sort of similarities when it comes to writing it, may differ. So I wanted to ask about documentaries, because you were working on a documentary. I have no clue what the process is for a documentary, so I'm curious. And where does the blend of you writing as an author versus a screenwriter coincide with doing a documentary?
Yeah, it's very different. The weird thing is, if you go Google, like, I want to read some documentary screenplays, there aren't any, right? Because that's not
Yeah.
really typically that's not how they do them. So, like one of our other partners, Jordan Morris, is one of the other teachers in Buzztown, the screenwriting community that I have.
Hmm.
He came out with a movie called Mr. Dress Up, which in Canada, Mr. Dress Up was like their Mr. Rogers, right?
Okay.
So,
Okay.
like with something like that, you have like treatments and outlines and ways you're going with things, but it's more like he's probably doing 50 interviews or more with people over multiple years, and it's shaping and growing as it goes, and it's getting funding and losing funding, and then Amazon buys it, and then all these like crazy things are happening, right?
Hmm.
So that's like typically it's more like that. So you're writing all the questions and coming up with interviews, and it's closer to a podcast than anything else probably. And then
Hmm.
after that, it's like you're turning on like your editor cap and you're editing all those things together and trying to fill out the structure. And in Jordan's case, he's listed as a screenwriter. He put himself in the documentary to fill in any pieces that weren't there so they could have that narrative, right? And I've asked a lot of filmmakers, like, well, how do you decide if you need to put yourself into it or not, or is that
Hmm.
taking away from it? And it's all different, like based on the subject and things like that. Um, Mine's different still, though. So my documentary is called Daredevil Society. It's about the history of stuntmen and stuntwomen in Hollywood, from like Buster Keaton in silent films to like Mission Impossible today. Like, how did stunts
Hmm.
evolve over time? So I've interviewed probably 40 or 50 stunt people already.
Hmm.
Um, and also some like biographers of the early ages, things like that. But what we're trying to do, and there's like it's more like figuring out some legal tightrope walking. Is there a way to do this without needing any new footage, right? Because
Yeah.
what takes a $50,000 documentary and makes it 500,000 is you're flying all over the place and filming people literally talking to camera and stuff like that. So all
Hmm.
my stuff's over Zoom. And if you look at, there's a Bruce Lee documentary. There's also a John Belushi documentary in the last couple of years. The Bruce Lee one was the one on Be Water on ESPN. There's
Hmm.
no talking heads. You don't see people talking to camera like you would in most docs. You just see archival footage of Bruce Lee, and there it says like voice sub at the bottom, whatever. So
Hmm.
I realized that kind of watching. It's like, oh, like you can actually like you can just make a movie on your own. You do all the interviews over Zoom or Riverside or something like this. You capture the
Hmm.
audio. You use the actual footage and behind the scenes footage from the movies and things like that. And then what you're having to figure out is the fair use quality of it. Because I mean, legally, it should all be fair use, but you have to do that like properly. So that's the part we're trying to figure out. Like, so I've
Hmm.
hired a assistant, and I've also got an editor that help me work on these things. We also do a YouTube channel too, but we kind of do these things like simultaneously. But like
Hmm.
with that in mind, like once we figure out those pieces, and we've already started, like we've been doing this for a couple of years now, so we're
Hmm.
well into the process. But you can actually make a movie. You could literally make a movie by yourself in your room. Like if you're just like doing the recordings yourself, cutting it together. Like I'm using like iMovie and like stuff that's like basically free.
Hmm.
So I plan to later teach people how to do this too, and like show that you can make a film kind of by yourself as like a break-in documentary or something like that. So that's kind of like some of the big ideas around what we're doing with that.
Okay. And so, and I'll just ask you a couple more questions. I know we're approaching that 30-minute mark. So I know how to do it right when it comes to books and how to get the book out there. The promotions are pretty self-explanatory, and you don't necessarily need a huge team to do it. With film and promoting that is different, right? In the sense of maybe getting the word out there might not be as hard, but going to different platforms to try to promote it maybe it may pose as a challenge. But film festivals, I know that's a way to get your films out there. But outside of that, I'm not too knowledgeable on it, so I'm curious. And when you're finished with the film, right, it's going through post production and everything is ready to go. How do you spread the word and get that film into the hands, or not? I shouldn't say the hands, or people to be able to go out and see the film. How does that go?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's sort of what we're teaching and also figuring out in Buzztown. But that's the process that's probably like the least straightforward. I mean, anyone I've interviewed, they would just tell you to go into the festival route, try to get it, picked up that way. There are obviously buyers there. That's one way to do distribution. What I'm trying to do is a little bit different. Is like I'm just meeting as many people as I can in the business, and doing it this way is like the stunt world. Even though movies seem big, when you start talking to like who knows who, you find out it's a pretty small world. Like it didn't take me too many people to meet the highest people in the industry, as far as like that world goes. So like I feel like I've met the right people to kind of like guide me in the direction as we get closer to it. And I'll just start to kind of reach back out to ask those people like specifically what they would do. But either like there's some kind of meeting like that with distribution, or the other route completely is like putting drafts on YouTube and seeing how they do. And I've done some of that already. Like I've got some teasers out there that have got like 60,000 views and stuff like that just show that like, okay, there is some interest in this. But it's the thing is, it's not the same every time. It's like, it's totally different, whichever way, every time you make a film, it's kind of a different story, at least for those that are trying to break in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, well, I guess that does make sense actually, kind of like in actuality, because everybody does it differently. What may work for you may not necessarily work for others. But I think one constant is that knowing, just having a circle of people who you can depend on can help you. The bigger your circle, the more resources that you have, the more people who are willing to help you.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to ask you before I let you go, because man, I can ask you a million questions. And you're a real easygoing guy and really easy to talk to. So that helps. So I mentioned at the start a website that I wanted to share with everyone on how people can find you. So if you don't mind, please provide an information of how people can, find your work.
Yeah, I mean, everything should be on just brockswinson.com, where you can follow me, Brock Swinson on X or Twitter. And also, I'll give your audience too, I'll give you guys like a Google Drive link. You can get a bunch of stuff that we give away for free. So it's like my book and audio book. There's a 30-day prolific writing challenge. There's a course I did with some students, how to write a nonfiction book in 12 weeks. That one will probably be really relevant for your audience too.
Okay.
Later in that, I actually had some experts come on and tell them like how to be the number one, stuff like that in Amazon search, and some of those things are in there too. And also the Upwork Unfair Advantage, marketing for writers, marketing for authors, writing TV pilots. There's just a ton of stuff in there, all kinds of writing that they can have for free.
That is, thank you so much. Thank you. Just thank you. I don't even know what else to say to that. Thank you so much. This is like off topic, but I wanted to say that, everybody starts somewhere, and everybody like has a vision for what they're trying to do and who they're trying to help. And when I started this show back up, like I relaunched it back in January, I knew I really just wanted to help the younger generation of writers. And I knew I wanted to help them and the creators as well in ways that I didn't feel I could find it in a great abundance. Sometimes you don't even know what to type up in order to find what you're looking for. You just go at it and you figure it out as you go. And just being able to meet just an extensive amount of just kind people, genuine people, hardworking people who range from the entertainment business to the book publishing world, and a blend of both. And being able to meet you through Diane has been wonderful, man. And I'm really grateful that you came on here. You took some time out of your day, and many people don't know this, but Brock was scheduled to come on to this show last week, and my wife had a freak accident and ended up going into the emergency room and was terribly sick. And then my children all got sick, and then got the coronavirus and everything. It was a disaster. The day of And I contacted him, and he was just so gracious and saying, "Yeah, no worries. Let me know when you're ready." And just like that, we got this scheduled, and he was ready to came on. So thank you so much, Brock. I thought I'd share that story with everyone. Just as busy as you are, and as big of a name that you are, and the amount of things that you've done, and to be able to come here and give us some time, I really appreciate it.
I'm glad to be here, and I appreciate you saying all that. Glad your family's feeling better. I've got a toddler and a pregnant wife myself, so yeah, a lot of times just things fall apart at the last minute. So I'm very used to that. But I appreciate everything you're doing, and there's good stuff you're putting out here.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Hey, on that note, thank you all so much for taking a brief moment out of your day to tune into today's episode. Brock, thanks again, man, and thank you, Diane, if you're watching this, for putting us in contact. And hey, that's all I got for you all. You all take care, and I'll catch you next time.